What are 4 exercises for training the glutes to help build low back strength and endurance? That's what we're going to be looking at in this tutorial, and we're going to look at it in 3 levels. We're going to build it from, let's just say, a foundation in level 1, and then we're going to build it up through levels 2 and level 3 to slightly more advanced training. If you want to build your low back strength endurance, please do hit the link below, go through to my How to Build Low Back Strength Endurance online 12-week program. Level 1, or the foundation to all of this, is getting the glutes active. So what we're going to do is we're going to start very basic, getting the glutes active with double leg, with both feet on the floor, and then moving into single leg with 1 foot on the floor. Exercise number 1 is going to be a glute bridge. So we're going to be using this setup here. I'm going to be using a bench. You can do this from the floor, but what we do is we come into position, sit ourselves in front of a bench, put our arms across it just to make sure we've got the back in the right place. Basically, we want the bottom of the shoulder blades into the bench and also the head going onto the bench as well, so it's not hanging off, putting any extra unnecessary stress on the neck. So what we do is we come up and we come into this position here. Now the goal for this is to get the glutes nice and squeezed. So we want to feel those squeeze. We also just want to be managing how tight it feels in the hamstring. So we want to be trying to calm those down as best we can, but keeping the glute squeezed and holding there. Once we can get the glutes active, what we can then start to do is we can then start to build the training into single leg. Now, by that what I mean is when most people go into single leg, they find it difficult to contract their glutes. So we start in this position so we can get the glutes engaged, because it's much easier when we get both of them engaged rather than just one at a time. So what we need to be able to do, or the goal of this exercise, is to be able to hold the glutes strong, to be able to keep them activated and hold the position. Because what we then do when we move into sort of the second part of this exercise, which is then moving into the single leg element of it. So what we need to be able to do is feel the glutes being active. So what that essentially looks like is we come into the same position, but this time feet and knees are going to go together. So we come up into the same position, like we've been doing with the double leg bridge, we squeeze the glutes. So we get them squeezed, we bring the knees together, and then we just lift the leg up. But what we want to be able to feel is the leg that's down, I want to be able to feel that glute nice and squeezed. What then I do is I bring my foot down and I swap over. And again, I want to be able to feel my glute squeezed here. If I can start to do that, and I can start to feel left glute and right glute working independently of each other, we're kind of then ready to move on to the next level. But how we would put this together would be double leg bridge, feeling the squeeze, or getting them active, feeling the squeeze, build it up to say a 30-second hold, and then we can start thinking about going into say a 10 or a 15-second hold on single leg. The other key thing with this is keeping the hip up. So tummy goes tight, and then we keep the hip up to squeeze. What we don't want is a pinch in the back. We want to try and avoid the pinch in the back. If we get a pinch in the back, just drop down out of there, because all that's happening is the pelvis is starting to tilt. So what we want to be able to do is double leg bridge up to 30 seconds into a single leg bridge, which we then go into at say 10 or 15 seconds, but all the time keeping the hips up in the air without a pinch in the lower back. Exercise number 2 of this, let's just call it level 1 training, is then a side plank. Now the side plank is key because one, we're getting the lateral seam of tissues. So we're getting all the muscles up the outside of the leg, and the outside of the torso. We're also getting the tendons, the fascia, and all the ligaments that are there to support the outside of the body. So again, what we want to do is we want to start with 2 feet on the floor. So when we come into side plank, we come down, we'll start with the top foot in front of the bottom foot. We'll come into elbow below the shoulder. What we then do is come up like so. Now, why are we using the side plank? Because it's a core exercise for the obliques. Well, what we can get is very good glute medius, glute minimus activation from this exercise. So first of all, we need to be able to hold that position, much like we did with the bridge. We need to be able to hold the position and get the muscles active. What we're then going to do, once we can do that, so it might be, again, we get up to 30 seconds. Once we get up to 30-second side plank, what we can then start to do is move into what I would describe as like a single leg version of it. And what that looks like exactly the same position. The only difference being now we're going to start with both feet on top of each other. Because when we come up into this position, what we've now got is a loop, a closed loop around my hips and around my feet. So what I'm then going to do is lift a leg up and place it on the floor. I'm then going to lift it up and I'm going to bring it back. Why am I doing that? Very simple reason. As soon as I lift my foot off, or my top foot off the bottom foot, I break that closed loop around my pelvis and my feet. And it makes this bottom leg have to work that much more. And what you should find is the hip becomes that much more active. So it's very much, when we come into this position, you should be able to feel relatively comfortable here. But what we then do is we lift up, and this lower leg has to work so much harder, which is where glute medius, glute minimus comes in. So that is where the glute training comes in for this exercise. So level 1 is just about going from double leg to single leg because it gets so much harder, but also activating the glutes from the double leg into the single leg. Level 2, we're now going to introduce some load and some movement. So what we've done in level 1 is get the activation. So we need to carry that teaching point or that concept through into these level 2 exercises. So what we're going to do is the Romanian deadlift or the deadlift. We're going to deadlift it off the floor and then we're going to do the Romanian deadlift. So basically we're going to come hips back, keep the back up. If we can keep the back up, that's going to keep the lower back muscles engaged and get the whole posterior chain working. But obviously we're just looking for the glutes at the moment. So we're going to come back into this position. We're going to lift the weight from the floor. We're going to stand up tall. What we're then going to do is we're going to come back, same position. We're going to keep the weight close. But what we want to be able to do in this position is start to engage the glutes as we come to the top and squeeze at the top. Again, try not to, like I talked about with the bridge, is come through into that extra bit of extension which is possibly going to pinch the back and cause it a problem. So we just come up to standing. What we then do is go back down. Again, we engage the glutes or glute max and squeeze. Engage glute max and squeeze at the top. So what we've done there, as I've mentioned, is we're using the hip hinge and we're engaging glute max. So we're consciously doing that. In the bridge, it should just happen unconscious. It should just happen because you're in the position. With this one, we need to consciously engage it. Because what we're then going to do is we're going to then bring in glute medius, glute minimus, which are on the side of the pelvis. So what we're then going to do is we're going to do the same movement, which is here, and then squeeze the glutes like so, like we've done. But if I face the front, what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to start pushing my knees out. So as I go down, I'm going to start pushing my knees out to the outside of my feet, which is going to engage glute medius, glute minimus, and squeeze to the top. So we're getting all of the glutes engaged, squeeze to the top. Squeeze to the top. Again, knees out and squeeze to the top. So with regards to, let's just call it level 2 training, we're now adding some movement in. So you're going to start finding it a little bit harder to engage the glutes, but again, we're doing it consciously with the hip hinge and then extension of the hip. Squeezing the glutes at the top, tummy's obviously tight, muscles or erector spinae group will be working. So what we're now starting to do is get all this posterior chain starting to work together, but we're sort of honing in and emphasizing a little bit more going through glute max, glute medius and glute minimus. Level 3, we're going to take it from the double leg RDL to the single leg RDL. So again, I'll use the 16, but basically what we're doing, same thing, but just on one leg. But what we're trying to do here is get this glute engaged and again squeeze at the top, just touch the other foot down. But we're taking all the principles from the double leg, so we're not coming through into the hyperextension. We're just going hips back, hips forward, squeeze one glute. Hips back, hips forward, squeeze one glute. Couple of other things to remember with this one. Shoulder, hip, ankle, all stays in a line. So as I come down, what I can do as well is just lift this heel a little bit, get this glute engaged. So I've got glute 1 and glute 2 all engaged. Again, keeping that position, just holding a weight down here. So I've got engaged here and engaged here. Again, we can swap over, exactly the same. Straight leg, shoulder, shoulder, hip and ankle, up and down, getting into that position. So we've gone through 3 levels, from double leg to single leg, introducing movement, introducing balance, introducing coordination. So as a quick summary, the 4 exercises that we've talked about are the double leg bridge, single leg bridge, RDL, and the single leg RDL. All of the way through, we're trying to progress and keep the glutes active when we lift that 1 foot from the floor. When we come up to standing, we've got to be a lot more conscious about our glute activation, but also we don't want to be going through hyperextending, pinching the back in the bridge and in the RDLs, as I've described. And when we do the single leg RDL, we can get a little bit out of the other glute just by lifting the leg back and just pushing that heel and getting that glute engaged as we come down and back up. If you've enjoyed this content, please do hit the like button below. If you've learned something new, hit the thanks button below. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it in the comment section below. And if you want to watch more tutorials like this, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be sent them when I release them.